Every story needs a villain we love to hate. In Jaya, that was Bellamy, the arrogant rookie who punched Luffy through a bar, the man who thought the Sky Island was just another lie, and that chasing dreams was for fools. But what if I told you that the hyena of Mocktown isn't just a loudmouth bully? He's one of the most tragic characters in all of One Piece. Now, before you dislike the video and report my whereabouts to Interpol, you need to hear me out. Because behind Bellamy's laugh is a man who lost everything, who believed in the wrong god, and who learned too late what it really means to have a dream. Bellamy was born in the North Blue, in a quiet little town called Notice, where fairy tales came with warnings. And the story every child grew up hearing about was the tale of Noland the Liar, which to the adults of Notice wasn't about adventure, but a lesson in obedience. So in a town that punished dreamers, Bellamy learned early that believing in fairy tales get you killed. Now we all know that Noland wasn't actually lying, but the poor people of Notice couldn't know. Bellamy grew up restless, tired of his boring hometown, and desperate to prove himself. So he formed his own crew and set sail, swearing he'd never be another fool chasing myths. And then he met him, Don Quixote Doflamingo, as the heavenly demon spoke of a new age where weak ideals would die and only strength would matter. A message Bellamy took to heart a little too literally. He wasn't evil, he was young, ambitious, and desperate for someone to look up to. And unfortunately, that someone was a warlord in a pink feather boa. With Doflamingo's emblem, Bellamy became the big-time rookie, tearing through the Grand Line with a bounty of 55 million. And his introduction was legendary. After losing a card game to one of the greatest pirates of all time, comparable to the likes of Roger and Rox, Rocio the Executioner. Okay, sorry, I know he's not all that, but I thought his tattoos were cool.
You suck!
Bellamy accused him of cheating, stabbed him, set him on fire, and pushed him out of the window. A perfect introduction for a psycho pirate. When Luffy, Zoro and Nami went looking for clues about Skypiea in Mocktown, they stumbled into Bellamy's first mate, Sarquis. He spoke like a snobby, arrogant brat. He dissed their drip, and he even threw some money at them for new clothes, which is actually very funny. Bellamy was made aware of the pirate that seemed to embody everything he hated, that of course being Monkey D. Luffy. Bellamy laughed at Luffy's dream. He, along with his crewmates, beat him and Zoro up. He humiliated them and called them fools, just like the adults back in Notice had mocked Noland. Luffy and Zoro took the beating that time, but when Luffy later returned and finally struck back, it wasn't even a fight. In one punch, Bellamy wasn't just defeated, his entire belief system was shattered. Word of Bellamy's defeat spread fast, too fast. As in just 3 days, word had spread across the entire Grand Line that the self-proclaimed big-time rookie had been flattened by a single punch. But for Bellamy, defeat didn't just mean humiliation. As it turned out, it meant something far worse. A meeting with his manager, and by manager I mean Don Quixote Doflamingo. So when Doffy arrived in Mocktown, it wasn't to offer a pep talk or a get-well-soon card, but to entertain himself and deliver a message. With a flick of his strings, he turned Bellamy's crew into his personal puppet show, forcing him to fight his own first mate Sarquis. The man Bellamy worshipped didn't see him as a disciple, he saw him as disposable, as nothing more than a way to deliver a message to his other followers. And as Doflamingo watched, smiling, Bellamy did the only thing he could. He begged, trying to explain his failure, to promise he was still loyal, but the heavenly demon didn't care. Bellamy wasn't a villain anymore. He was a broken follower, trying to understand why his god abandoned him. It's like finding out that your lifelong idol thinks you're a boring NPC. In that moment, everything Bellamy believed in collapsed, as Sarquis charged against him, and the screen turned to black. We all thought that he was gone, but somehow Bellamy survived. After his punishment in Mocktown, Bellamy wasn't the same guy, as his pride was missing in action and his ego was in shambles. Oh my god, was that a Law reference? And he knew exactly what he had to do to survive in Doflamingo's world. He had to prove his loyalty once again. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit the like button. If we can hit 600 likes, that would make my year. He took his crew and did the unthinkable. He set sail for Skypiea, the very place he called a fairy tale. But this wasn't about adventure or dreams. It was more of a twisted pilgrimage. And he at some point even abandoned his crew, all for a shot at getting back into the boss's good graces. Talk about toxic work environment, am I right? He came back to the surface with a pillar of gold, and he offered this pillar to the only person he seemed to care about, Doflamingo. And that's the tragedy. Bellamy changed, but he was still completely under the grip of the man who destroyed him. He went to heaven, and all he brought back was a souvenir for his abuser. As Bellamy's loyalty wasn't earned through respect, it was imposed through fear and manipulation. When Bellamy returned in Dressrosa, he was almost unrecognizable, as the loud, mocking hygiene of Jaya was gone, replaced by a quieter, more controlled man, who was still very dangerous, proved by his 195 million berry bounty. His first interaction with Luffy shows just how trapped he still was, for he admits he went to Skypiea. He saw with his own eyes that dreams are real, and he even tells Luffy that he holds no grudge between them, which is a huge moment of growth. Bellamy finally understands what he didn't back then, but he still can't let go of Doflamingo. It's like he took all the right lessons from the wrong teacher. He'd been promised a place in Doflamingo's crew if he won the tournament in the Colosseum, and in there he was a monster, defeating fighters like Abdullah and Jeet with improved, precise spring hopper moves. But after the King Punch, Bellamy's dreams of winning the tournament comes to a crashing halt. As Bellamy is carried out of the arena, he shares a friendly chat with Luffy. Luffy remarks that Bellamy seems to be a changed man. Bellamy denies having changed at all, but he actually compliments Luffy's strength and says he noticed how Luffy cheered him on during the fighting, proving that he has in fact changed. Later, while he's recovering, he gets a letter from Doflamingo himself, with the offer of a permanent promotion to family officer if he assassinates Luffy before the tournament ends. Talk about a performance review, am I right? He remembers Luffy was the only one who cheered for him in the ring, so you can see the conflict on his face, but he convinces himself to do it. So his moment comes. He finds Luffy, puts on a menacing grin and says, "Found you." But before he can even throw a punch, his co-worker, Dellinger, the fishman in the killer heels, shows up and casually reveals his new orders from Doflamingo to kill Bellamy, since the boss found him an eyesore. In an instant, Bellamy's world shatters again. Doflamingo didn't just fire him, he sent HR to terminate him with extreme prejudice. Dellinger brutally wounds him, and just as he's about to finish the job, Bartolomeo swoops in with his barrier, making the man Bellamy was sent to kill indirectly become the only reason he's left breathing. By the time the birdcage chaos reached the royal palace, Bellamy was already a broken man. The guy who once laughed with his crewmates was now living a nightmare, facing the final brutal truth of Doflamingo's betrayal. So he actually confronted his former master, demanding answers, but the heavenly demon's response was not great, giving Bellamy a savage beating, then literally lifting his head to show Luffy and Law just how low his former disciple had fallen. And Bellamy, completely broken, cried, not begging for his life, but begging for someone to end it. But Doflamingo had a more cruel idea, using his strings to turn Bellamy into a puppet, forcing him to attack Luffy, with Bellamy still barely conscious for all of it, desperately begging Luffy to dodge his own attacks, since he had no freedom, no choice. When Doflamingo finally released him, Bellamy had a chance to make his own move. His whole life flashed before his eyes as he was trying to make sense of what was happening, and barely able to stand, he charged Luffy with his spring hopper. A final, desperate act of clinging to the only code he had left. Luffy pleaded with him to stop, but Bellamy wouldn't, out of a twisted sense of honor. Luffy didn't know how to react, leading to Bellamy landing a few big hits. But Luffy quickly regrouped, and then it ended. with Luffy's final punch mirroring their first fight in Jaya. But this defeat was completely different, because in his last conscious moment, there was no humiliation, just a simple human thought, as he was grateful that Luffy had called him a friend. After Doflamingo's defeat, Bellamy was finally faced with something new, a choice. He asked Law why he was spared, and the answer was beautifully simple, because Luffy considered him a friend. So for the first time, Bellamy wasn't defined by his fear of a tyrant, but by the belief of a friend. In a surprisingly mature move, he didn't immediately want to join Luffy's new Grand Fleet, having learned his lesson about blind loyalty the hard way. Though he did keep a piece of Luffy's Vivre card, and a quiet reminder that real friendship doesn't require obedience. Bellamy then does the one thing that no one else in the Grand Line seems to ever do: take a career break, as he leaves piracy behind, choosing a simple life as a dyer under a man named Serizawa, having traded chaos for craft. And all this is why Bellamy is One Piece's most tragic villain, and in many cases the most misunderstood, having idolized the wrong guy, discarded his own crew to prove himself, only to get broken by the very man he worshipped. Yet he survived, he grew, and he finally found his own humanity. So the next time you think of Bellamy, don't just remember the hyena of Mocktown, but remember the boy from North Blue, the fool who chased a tyrant's approval. Because in a world full of pirates, legends and heroes, Bellamy's story reminds us that the most tragic villain is often just the one who wanted to be seen.